Hello and welcome to day 20 of the Kickstart Your Running in 21 Days project. Really hope you enjoyed this activity yesterday on acceptance and that it got you, I'm sure it got you thinking in terms of those things that you can and can't control and those things you have to accept. Today's activity is going to be all about perceptions, and it segues neatly into the activity, the work that you did yesterday on acceptance. So hope you enjoy this one as well. I'm sure you will. Once we recognize and accept those things that we can't change and we have to let go of, then something else we can do here is to also change our perceptions of things too. And that's what today's activity is going to be all about. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how how changing perceptions actually works. And the first is something that I did, and then the second is a triathlete that I was working with a group with, and what he did in terms of changing his perceptions. So the first one is me. So this is going back a few moons now. This is when I was a runner back in England. And I was out one day for a 10-mile run, and it was cold and wet, and we occasionally get days like those in England. I was halfway through the run, so literally 5 miles in, and I was starting to get cold and pretty uncomfortable, and I could feel my body starting to just kind of tense up. And that wasn't a great and enjoyable place for me to be. So I was like, oh shoot, I've got 5 miles to go if I turn around and get back home now. But I'm not going to get any warmer. It's, the rain's not showing any signs of easing up. And if I do the next 5 miles, just carry on, then, this isn't going to be much fun. So I didn't stop, but I kind of slowed down for a little bit, and I thought, what can I do here? So I was like, okay, what I can change is my perception of what's happening. So what I decided to do was every drop of rain that was falling on me, I imagined was warm rain. That's simple. Yeah, nothing more complicated. And decided to focus on that and just see what would happen. And within a couple of minutes, nothing else had changed. There wasn't, the wind had dropped off, or the rain had stopped, or the temperature had changed, anything like that. Within a couple of minutes, my core temperature increased. So I actually felt warmer. Because I was changing my perception, I had changed my perception of what was happening in the environment around me. And that really made a huge difference. I picked up speed again. I felt comfortable. I wasn't tense and cold like I was before. So I actually enjoyed the 5 miles back home again. Yeah, so that made a big difference to me, and that was really my first experience of focusing on perceptions to see if I could change something in terms of what's happening around me in terms of my running. The second was a triathlete, and he was here with a group of triathletes, and they were having a camp, and I was working with them on the Friday evening on some mental skills stuff. And then the next morning, one of the triathletes had a time trial locally just down the hill in Boulder here. And I know he was a little bit, he was feeling kind of confident, but he wasn't entirely sure how he was going to do. So I was really interested when he came back after the time trial. I was really interested to see how he got on. And I could tell he was pretty excited when I saw him after the time trial. And he was like, I gotta tell you. I'm like, go on, tell me. And he said, he turned a corner on the time trial, and as he turned the corner, it was like, whoomph, headwind. And you know, for those of you that live in Colorado, then we can get quite a few of those, and I'm sure in other places of the country too. But so you all know what that feels like. And he said that he was like just kind of grinding, trying to keep the cadence high, trying to keep his power output. Of course, he had all the gizmos on his bike, so he knew his power output and how fast he was going, all this kind of stuff. And then he was like, okay, thinking back to what Terry was telling us last night, what can I change in terms of my perception of this? So he was like, okay, imagine if I had a tailwind behind me on this road. How would it feel? How would it feel with a nice kind of tailwind pushing me in the back? And he said that his speed picked up by half a mile an hour, so 0.5 of a mile an hour. And instead of kind of battling against the wind, he was able to keep a pretty good power output and keep his cadence high as well on the bike. And he came back and he was like, oh my God, you know, this stuff works. And I was like, yes, it does. Yes, it does. So, so hopefully those are two good examples for you of how to change perceptions and then the kind of things that happen as a result. So the changes it can make. So the way we perceive things and can have a huge impact on our experience of a particular situation. So your mission for today, should you choose to accept it, is I'd like you to think back to any situation in your past where you really struggled with the environment in some way or something that was happening in some way. And it doesn't matter how long ago it was. It's if it's more recent, then that's fine. But if it's many years ago, then, excuse me, that's fine too. And so what you're going to be doing is I'm going to work with you in terms of changing your perceptions of what was happening to you at the time. Yeah? And the beauty of this is that it's in your imagination. But of course, what your body responds to is whatever's happening in your imagination, in your mind. Yeah? The body doesn't differentiate between whether we're experiencing it for real or whether we're actually just imagining it. We're experiencing it in just our mind. So once you've got that thought in mind of an experience that you'd like to work with, then hold that thought as we prepare to get relaxed now. So as usual, make sure your phone ring is turned off, you're in a situation you know you're not going to be disturbed, and just settle into a chair or sofa, place on the floor or your bed, and just get ready to get relaxed now. And then once you're comfortable, then we're going to start as usual with 3 big deep breaths. And then let your breathing return to normal. And then as you do that, then just also allow your eyes to gently close. And as you do that, then just be aware of your body starting to relax and feel a little bit heavier in the chair or the floor or the sofa or the bed underneath you. And then turn your attention to your breathing. So we're going to count each in-breath as 1, each out-breath as 1, and count up to 10, and then start over again, and cycle through that 4 or 5 times. And then I'd like you to bring back the run or the race that you chose to work on for this activity. And so just allow it back into your imagination now. Take yourself back to what was happening on that day. And just focus on your senses. So what were you seeing here? Was there anybody else that was with you? Do you remember if you felt something against your skin? Was it a bit like me, that I had the wind and the rain and it was cold and all those things? And then what were you hearing? So was there any interactions? Were there any voices? And also then, what were you smelling? Were there any smells in the air around at the time? And then was there any taste in your mouth? Was there anything that you'd eaten before or something like that? Or maybe drank before? And then lastly, how were you feeling emotionally? So, what was happening in terms of your emotional state? And the trick here is to connect with this memory, this experience, as deeply as you can. And that's why it's important to think about all the senses and how they contribute to making any memory. Any memory that we have is a combination of senses and emotions. And just notice again how this combined experience, how that made you feel. Now, just like I did with the raindrops on my run, then what could you do now in your imagination to change your perception of this memory that you have, this run? What could you change that would actually change your experience? And something else you could do here is that you have different possibilities. So you can maybe play with different ideas for how to change your perception in this situation. And it's great opportunity now because of course you're not doing this for real. You're doing this in your mind, in your imagination, and so anything is possible. You can introduce crazy ideas, but the key thing is to actually get to know that you can change your perceptions of things, and to be able to do that, so you can switch it on, you can switch it off again. Yeah. And also imagine what might have happened in this situation if you had decided to change your perception of whatever it was. And then, how this would change the outcome of that particular experience, that run or that race, whichever it was. And just play through that in your mind now. And notice how different this is compared to your original memory. And then bring your attention back to the present and just be aware of your points of contact between your body and the sofa or the chair or the floor or the bed underneath you. And we're going to take 3 big deep breaths. And then whenever you're ready, gently open your eyes and then take a big stretch as you bring your attention back into the room again. All right, congratulations on completing day 20. Remember to make any notes from today's activity that made sense to you and you'd like to record, and then you can maybe refer back to it at another time. So tomorrow is the last day in terms of activities. So congratulations on your stamina and endurance and perseverance for getting this far, and looking forward to working with you on the last activity for tomorrow. So take care, believe in yourself, and vamonos, have fun.